Let's go watch it in 2D. No, let's go watch it in 3D. But if we watch it in 3D, then is it worth the cost?
Welcome to the future. Life is good, but it can be better.
Nothing good is born from lies. And greatness is not what you think.
Wonder Woman 1984.
Hello. This is Adolf, and I have with me New Jake.
Hi, everybody.
And today we're reviewing a new 3D movie,
Finally.
Wonder Woman 1984. Now, I did not get to watch this in 3D. I think there's like one or two theaters near me that have it. I decided just to watch it HBO Max at home. So, New Jake, since you actually did write the review, and you did watch it in 3D in the theater, right?
Yes, I did.
I'll let you take it over. How was the 3D aspect of this movie?
It was really good. It wasn't anything outstanding. If you've seen the 3D for the first movie, it's almost exactly the same. Really, really good.
Okay. Overall, good amount of depth, good amount of pop.
Yes, could have used more pop, but the depth was there. It felt natural. It felt like it was almost shot with the 3D camera, but I know for a fact that it wasn't. But I mean, it just seemed like the perfect conversion.
Okay. Whenever I watched it, I was like, damn, I really feel like 3D could have really worked in this movie. So,
Oh yes, it did. It did really good.
there's, the opening scene with, I don't know, Olympics, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was like a training thing or some sort of Themyscira games, but yeah, it did work really good with that scene.
The various flying scenes, I imagine, look pretty cool.
Yes, especially, well, I can't spoil anything, but the scene with the fireworks was really well done. The fireworks entered into the theater. It looked really good.
I was wondering about that scene, actually.
Yes.
So the different flying scenes, there's multiple flying scenes, without giving
Yes.
too much away.
Mhm.
I kind of worried that the scene toward the end with the fight with the cheetah, that was too dark. Was it okay in theaters or no?
I mean, it was actually pretty decent. There was some darkness, but there's also plenty of light because where they're around some electrical equipment, there are some sparks flying, so it kind of helped lighten the picture frame. So it actually did pretty decently.
Okay, is there any issues that you had overall with the 3D or no?
Actually, there was one issue. It wasn't with the 3D itself. It was actually with the theater screen. The projector actually, it was shifted a little too far to the right. So a couple of the credits were, I couldn't see part of the letters, but that was the only issue I've had with it.
Okay. So it sounds like overall you had a really good time with the 3D aspect of this movie.
Yes, I did.
And you could feel good about recommending it?
Oh yeah, if you could find the 3D aspect, the 3D theater, go to it if you can. It's worth the upcharge. If not, hopefully there's a 3D Blu-ray release you can watch at home safely.
Okay, so what is your final score on the 3D aspect itself?
I would say it's a good 8 out of 10.
Okay, so great. 3D.
Yes.
Okay. Now on to the movie itself. So Wonder Woman 1984 is the semi-sequel to Wonder Woman, which I say semi-sequel because it doesn't like directly reference the first movie that much. I mean, there is, but it isn't. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree 100%. The only real link besides Wonder Woman herself is Steve Trevor. He obviously comes back, and he's the only direct link to the previous film.
So the basic plot in a nutshell. I mean, it's always hard to have a sequel, and it's always hard to be like, okay, did they capture the magic of the first one that I really loved? And overall, I did enjoy the movie. I felt like I was disappointed in it, but disappointment does not equal bad. It just means disappointment. What are your overall thoughts before we get to the movie plot itself?
Yeah, it's my sentiments exactly. Is I've been waiting for 3 years for it to come out, and it just kept on building that anticipation, and the trailers made it look so good. And then I seen it, and yeah, there was an air of disappointment, but there still was scenes good enough to make it watchable. Well, better than watchable, but not as good as the first movie.
Yeah, and we're not going to get into the comparison of the first movie, the second movie, in this, because we want it to be a standalone, just in case you haven't seen the first one. And, we want to be fair onto this movie itself. So, this movie itself, it's a little bit weird that it is a standalone, because you would think it would really have more connections to the other DC movies, but it doesn't. And there's a lot of questions that after watching the movie that I still have that the movie did not bother even trying to mention, which we won't get into those in this spoiler-free podcast. But specifically, the story here is, you figure out that Diana Prince, or AKA Wonder Woman, is still in Washington, D.C., and she meets Barbara Minerva, which is Kristen Wiig, who is, working in, I guess they're working in the Smithsonian, I guess?
Yeah. She's like in the gemology department of the Smithsonian.
And Pedro Pascal is Max Lord, and he
Yes.
is, I guess, like a oil salesman or land management or something. It's kind of vague at first.
Yeah, it's kind of like he's almost like a Ponzi scheme guy, almost like a Bernie Madoff or something, something along that comparison. Yeah.
Yeah, the movie has a relic from the past, and this relic is able to give people abilities, and that leads to many different things that, as you may expect, because these relics are not always kind, because if you get certain thing, you may take away certain thing. Without getting too much into spoilers here. So the main two villains here are Max Lord and eventually Kristen Wiig as Barbara Minerva. What'd you think of Cheetah and Max Lord?
I like the character concept of Cheetah. I don't like what she eventually became, but I do like Kristen Wiig in the role. She did surprisingly well. I guess amongst the action scenes, she did pretty decent too. But I really did like Pedro Pascal as Maxwell Lord, even though he kind of hammed it up a little bit. But I don't know, it felt like your typical comic book villain, and I enjoyed that.
I kind of feel like it in some ways it is accurate to the comics, the DC comics that this is based on, but I also feel like for me, Max Lord, it just is kind of cheesy, and it just. You're right. He did kind of ham it up. He kind of, in some ways, he's like a different version of Lex. But in this one, he doesn't have the charm I kind of actually like. I know a lot of people have compared him to Trump, and that's actually not completely unfair to Trump or Max Lord. But I kind of, love him or hate him, Trump does have a charm to him that, you can kind of understand why people like him. I don't, but still, you can kind of you can understand there's a charm to it.
Yeah, but he had a sort of a charm back in the 80s, which before, what happened now with his presidency, I could see him like kind of doing something like that in the 80s, just kind of selling himself on TV and just promoting himself and having that charm and almost a likability that Trump doesn't have, well, at least in my eyes, anymore. But
I mean, yes, some people can. I could understand why some people like that persona, but he has a charm, and I'm just gonna say that I don't like, but other people can. And I was kind of hoping for more of that in this movie with Max Lord, because they are similar kind of con man.
Right.
In some ways, Max Lord has been kind of considered a crappy version of Lex Luthor.
I mean, that's kind of unfair. I like to say that in the movie, at least, he had a humanity that Lex Luthor doesn't really possess, in my honest opinion. But
true.
I mean, yeah, it's just he was a little bit more of a likable version of Lex Luthor, if you could say that. But he still had some, evil qualities about him.
Yeah. So the main conceit here is what happens to people when they have their powers or don't have their powers, and you do get Chris Pine returning as Steve Trevor in a weird way, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, very strange.
People. So I guess a negative aspect for me is the length of this movie. It is way too long. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I felt every bit of those 2.5 hours. It was a drag.
And I like the characters. I mean, Gal Gadot is fantastic as Wonder Woman. I'm not gonna ever take that away from her because I think she does a great job in this role.
Yeah, she does even better in this movie.
Yeah, and Chris Pine, great too. I really like Kristen Wiig too. Kristen Wiig,
Mhm.
Pedro. But still, it just didn't connect with me as much as I would like. The action scenes are fun, really well done. I really liked when the action scenes did happen. It was like, damn, they really choreographed this well.
But there wasn't enough of them. Is one of the main issues with the movie. There's long swaths of the movie without any action.
Yeah, the middle is just kind of a drag. It's just kind of
Mhm.
slow to, and some of the action scenes, it kind of felt like, okay, they were cool, but it kind of feels like, is Wonder Woman really needed in these scenes? Like, it could have been any other hero, So, let's wrap up. What score would you give this movie out of a 1 out of 10?
If I had to do it without the 3D, I would say a 6 out of 10. But with the 3D, it bumps it up a full point, so a 7 out of 10 with the 3D.
Well, it has to stand on its own, and
Okay.
um,
So I'll say a 6 out of 10 on its own, which is a huge disappointment for me to say.
yeah, I went through 6 and 7 in my mind since I've watched it last day or so, and I have to agree with you as a 6. I mean, I don't hate the movie. I understand a lot of people are just hating on this movie. I think it's fine. It's so corny. It's so cheesy at the end. I was just like, come on, man. Is this the best you could do?
Yeah.
And
They've
it's
had
just-
3 years.
So, yeah, it's disappointing, but disappointing doesn't automatically mean it's a failure of film. It's not. It's not a failure of a movie. It just doesn't. I wish it was better than it was.
Oh, yeah, same.
And that's a good inside joke for anyone who has seen the movie.
Yeah.
All right. With that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this spoiler-free podcast. Anything else you wanted to say?
No, just be safe out there if you do decide to go see it in the theater.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Before this podcast wraps up, I want to thank my patrons. Thank you, Kano3D, Mr. Bengal 5, and Kevin Winter for your financial support on Patreon.com. So that's going to be it for this podcast. Thanks for listening. You can find 3D or 2D on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest, Instagram, and more. Just look for 3D or 2D. Links are in the info box. If you want to send us listener mail, our email address is email3dortwo@gmail.com. Thank you for either listening or watching this podcast. Goodbye.
Bye.
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 Bye, everyone.